Hello there and welcome to this video in which we are going to start on a to-do application. I plan on doing a series, so I don't know how many parts yet, but we do have an initial rough plan. I have a similar project, my task list on GitHub, but I'm trying a new project, a to-do list, sort of the same thing, but I wanted to start over when I did this video and maybe add a few more things than what the task list project has. So we're using the JavaFX MVVM structure. I'm going to have the functionality to add a to-do, to view all of my to-dos and to edit them, or edit one at a time. I have a to-do item which has an integer, there's a name for the owner, there's a text to indicate what the item is about, and a status whether it's completed or not. So we have the usual part, the core part that is present in all our MVVM projects. The view handler to handle the views and change between them, the view model factory to create view models, the model factory to create models, the main method to start everything, and this one here extends the JavaFX application. So this is the structure. I don't have that many details yet, so we'll see how it goes as we move along. So let's change to IntelliJ, and I think I'm going to start with the service down here to see if I can store a list of to-dos in a file and read that again. That's going to be the first part, so we have that in place, then the others can work upon that. So IntelliJ, new project, Java, that's good. We will call it To-Do App, and you can see my keystrokes down here in case I use some shortcuts in IntelliJ and you are curious about how to do that. Alright, everything is loaded. There isn't much to load right away. So the first thing is that I want to just add JavaFX to the project. I go to project structure and pick the modules, and we want to add here. I have it as a global library, so it's here for all of my projects, and I can just add that. Alright, good start. Now let's make some room for this one. It's not what we wanted. Alright, so first some packages. I'm going to need let's just create an initial package. To-do app. Seems like it's probably a good name. I'm going to need a core package. I'm going to need a model package. I'm going to need a view package. Alright, so that's my packages for so far. I'm going to start by creating a main method so I can run and try out my to-do service. So I'll create a main method, run to-do app. In here we put a main method, always start with main, and that's a good start. Now let's take a look at this one here. We will create a model class, my to-do here. This one, I'm going to need private int ID, I'm going to need a string owner, a string text, and a boolean, also private. Come on, is completed. Then we're going to create a constructor that sets everything. except the ID. The ID, I want that to be auto-generated, so this is not something the users should set. And then we need getters and setters for everything. Yep, bunch of boring code. So that's my to-do item. It's not very fancy. That's okay. These are the ones we want to store in the file. So let's create the interface, the to-do service interface here. We need a new package, to-do service interface. Now what should you be able to do with my to-dos? We're going to need a method for adding, public void add, like that. We're going to need a, let's say, update. I need to be able to delete a to-do. Delete, maybe by ID. And we need to be able to get all my to-dos, so that's going to return a list of to-do. Get, just import that, get all. Maybe I need to also be able to get one to-do. Get by an int ID. These are pretty standard methods. CRUD operations: create, read, update, delete. Okay, so this is a good starting point, I think. Maybe we will add methods later on. Maybe I figure out that we don't need some of them. We'll see. Okay, so that's the interface and the model class here. Now I need a to-do file service. I have the interface because then later maybe I could change it out to be a to-do database service, so it stores in a database, or maybe I want to store in a different type of file. I plan on just serializing my list of to-dos and put that in a file as a binary file. But maybe I wanted to store it as JSON or XML or something else later on. Then I can change this class here, and all the view models just know about the interface, so they don't have to be modified. I don't have to change any code on the other side of my to-do service interface. So dependency inversion, one of the solid design principles. It's a good idea. To-do file service. Okay, I need a file, so let's say private string path, and I just define that to be to-dos.bin, I guess. For binary file, we'll see. I haven't written a binary file before, we'll wing it as we go. I need a constructor, and in the constructor I want to load a list of to-dos or create a new one. So the idea is that I only save when there are changes, and then we store the to-dos in a list here temporarily, and it might not be the most efficient approach, but I think it's a good enough approach for our case here. I need a constructor. I don't want to set anything like that. And what do we do here? I need to check if the file exists, and if so, then load everything. Alternatively, I will just create a new to-do list here. So how do we do that? Alright, so let's try this. File f equals new file with the path here, if exists. Alright, then we do something to do read file. Otherwise we say, oh, I don't actually want that here. Maybe it doesn't matter all that much, but say new array list. So we just initialize it here. I need to initialize it in either case. So let's try this. Okay, if it exists, we want to read from it. Okay, before we do that, let me create a save method. That's going to be easier for testing. So first I can save some data to a file and then we can try and read it afterwards. So I will make it public for now. It should be private, but I need to run it from my main method. So we'll make it public void save changes, and we're going to serialize the list of to-dos, which means that my to-do item has to implement serializable, and all of these types here can be serialized. That's good. And then we want to serialize the list and write to the file. Alright, let's try this. We need a file output stream, call it fuzz, new file output stream, and we put the path here. This is the file. We need an object output stream, new object output stream with the file output stream. We have a bunch of errors here because I need to catch exceptions. So let's just fix that. Try catch. Okay. And save changes. We'll have to fix this later. Okay. Object output stream, write object. It takes my list like that. We close everything. Close, and the first to close, and that's probably it. So the idea is whenever I add a to-do, it's going to be put into the list. I save the changes, so that will write to the file. Whenever I update a to-do, that's going to modify the list, and we call the save changes afterwards, so it's written to the file. Whenever we delete, we need to save changes, so that's also written to the file. That's probably a good start. Then we need some method to read from file. It's going to return that. And how do we do that? Probably the inverse. So let's try that. File input stream. This new file input stream from that path. Object input stream voice from that one. Again, the try catch here. Maybe I want to do something about this later on. Maybe I don't. But now I have it as a to-do item. You can see that it's marked in blue. That actually means you can find it down here. All your to-do items around in your code. So that's a neat feature. And then we say, what do we say? We say read object. And that means I have to catch another exception. Like that. I want to collapse those, so just handle it in the same way. And what do I get here? I probably get an array list, so maybe I can just cast it. Array list of to do, like that. And what does it complain about? Unchecked cast. That's probably okay. Then we close the close and close. And that's well, I don't actually need to return anything because I have the list up here which I assign, so we'll just make the method void instead. There we go. Okay, now I need a way to test this, so we're going to have a here we go. That's why I wanted the else. So if we don't find the file, that means I haven't saved anything yet. We're going to create a method to add a couple of to-do items, just hard-coded, so that we can have something to work with. So list add new to-do, and what does a to-do require? It requires an owner. I'll say Troels, that's me. Text walk the dog is completed. Sure, I just did that before this video, so that's good. Here, owner, do the dishes. That's not done yet. And mow the lawn. Maybe I want to do that for someone else. Put in hands. My friend can come and do that work. Mow the lawn. That's false. He hasn't done that yet. And let's take something else and say pet the dog. That's also false, because whenever you have completed that, you need to pet him some more. So I think that's a never-ending task. Okay, so I have a simple class to just verify whether I can write and read from my file here. Write to and read from. Let's give that a shot. In here we say file service new file service, and the first time I'm going to seed it. Okay, so just to verify that I'm getting some objects in here, I'm going to debug it, and the debugger is going to show me if I have objects in the list. I can hold down Alt and I can click here and say the path. That's good. And here I have some to-do objects, a bit small, but it's an easy way to inspect things. Oh, I can. Oh, that's interesting. Whatever that does. Oh, I can. No, never mind. Okay, so that part works. Then we want to try to save changes. That's going to put it into the file. We'll see if that works. We'll just run it. Okay, so do I get a file somewhere? Here's my to-dos, the bin. And it doesn't know how to open that. Probably okay. And that means that when we run it again, hopefully I should be able to read from this binary file. So we'll just debug it again. And maybe I should, we stopped here. And the question is then, did we read anything or did we just seed it? So let me just put a breakpoint here. And then we can follow and see what happens inside. So I'll just go step into. That means we go into the file. We are going to step over. Yeah, that's good. If it exists, does the file exist? Yes, it finds it. We are reading from the file. Okay. And I do actually have my list here with my to-do items as expected. So this part is working nicely. What if I... Oh, we'll try that out later. Okay. So that's... We'll just make this private again. Oh, private. That's going to be something called from in here. Seed, that's probably okay. In case I delete the file, then I have some fallback default to-dos. It's beneficial for this example at least. And then let us implement the interface here. The interface, that means I have to implement the methods. down here. So implements interface to do service. I have to implement all of these methods. Add a to do. How do we do that? We say list.add. Well, it's a new to do, so I want to give that to do an ID. Right, every to do needs an ID. The ones that I created up here don't actually have one, so maybe that's a problem. It's not interesting. It's not all that relevant now, but we need to create an ID, and we say so I want to make sure that everyone gets a unique ID. And how do we do that? Well, we say int max equals to minus 1 equals to 0. Then we go through, well, they all have the same ID, 0. Okay, so I'm going to go through the list and find the to do with the highest ID, and then the new ID will be that found ID plus 1. So for each, that looks weird. That's because I have to do this one. In the list to do, t max is equal to let's just do this. If t.id get ID is larger than max, we say max equals t.getID. Okay, so at the end of the list here, after the iteration, I'm going to have found the maximum ID, and ID is then equal to max plus plus. Okay, so we need a new to do. I need to actually be able to set the ID. I have a set method for that. Okay, new to do. We say owner. No, I do have the to do here. So we say to do set ID with ID, and then we add that to do, and then we call save changes. So that's going to be written into the file now. Okay, that's how we add a to do. I should have put IDs on these. I'm just going to do that. So delete the file. Yeah, that's fine. It's being referenced, and then we want to have this is t1, and we say t1 set ID 1. Then we say, I should probably just have made another constructor for this, but I don't want anyone up here being able to set the ID. Well, it's being overridden anyway, but I just make sure. This one, T3, and T3 set ID 3, and the last one, oh, not that. This shortcut T4 and T4 set ID 4. Okay, so now the next one added should get an ID of 5. Let's just do the other ones here. If I want to update a to do, I need to find the existing to do and then override the changes. So let's say list. Well, I have to iterate through the list to find the correct one. So to do t equals null. Null. We go through the list. Here we go. To dos. If t, we'll call it found. If t dot id get id is equal to do get id. Found is equal to t break. If found is not, well, if it's still equal to null, something went wrong down here. I should have found something. I cannot update something that doesn't exist, so I'll just throw a new runtime exception and say to do with ID could not be found. Then I will catch this exception in the view model probably and handle that somehow. Okay, if I get to this part, it means that I have actually found the to-do I was looking for, and we can update it, and we say found.set. Let's just start here. To-do get is completed. Found set owner. Let's say to-do get owner, and found set text to-do dot get text. And then we need to save changes again. So I've made it that, well, we cannot update the ID of the to-do, and that's not supposed to be touched from the outside. Okay, delete something. We have to find the to-do to delete. Maybe there's a list dot delete remove all remove if. Okay. This one here takes a lambda expression and says we should remove something if this condition is true. So let's say t dot get ID is equal to the ID, and save the changes. What does this one do? Well, I could have made a for loop and found the to-do that I wanted to delete, and then we could say list.remove with that to-do. But here I'm just saying remove the to-do which has this ID. Then we call save changes. Get all. Well, I want to return a new array list and with my list in. So here I could just return my list, right? But then some view model has a reference to the list down here, and if they modify that, the list is being modified without saving the changes. So I'm making a list with the copy of the to-do items here. So these up here don't get a list down here they can modify. It's just an extra safety step in case that, well, I'm doing the entire example, so it's not really relevant for me because I know how to handle this, but maybe you have a semester project and you have a group and one person is doing the model storage thing here and another person is doing the stuff up here, and they haven't agreed upon how to interact with that list. So just to avoid mistakes, here we say list.get. Maybe that's a, well, that just gets an index. Is there a find any? Find first. This one probably finds. Let's see. Not entirely sure. Find first. I think it's going to find the first to-do item where get ID. Find first. Do I have to put this in? No. Then what does it expect here? Find first? Well, it should take some argument. Find any? Well, that's annoying. We'll just do a for loop. List if to-do dot get ID equals ID, return to-do. Okay. If we don't find anything, that means the ID we're looking for, you know, I couldn't find that, so we'll just throw new runtime exception. I could return null, but then I have to check for null somewhere else, and what does it mean that we return null? To do not found. To do with ID not found. Okay, we will handle the exception somewhere else in case we don't find the to do. That this shouldn't happen. But well, let's see. That's supposed to conclude my to do service, my file service here. For now, at least, let me just try it out again. We say save changes, service.save changes. That's made private now. So public for now. Okay, if I run this, we're supposed to get a file again. That came up there. And then we want to try and add a new to do. So we say service.add to do, new to do, and this one takes an owner, me, and text. Is it completed? Probably not. And then we save the changes, and that's supposed to go into the file. Okay, and then we say debug and see if the to-dos look correct now. Okay, my service, make this a bit bigger. I do have 5 to-dos. This one has ID 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's a surprise. When I add something, why do I not find 4 down here? And then it should be added. Oh, that's annoying. Hang on. Okay, well, there's a strange feature that I wasn't entirely aware of. Previously I had ++ here, but that seems to update the max after that I have assigned it to ID. So first it will assign 4 to the ID, and then it will increment max to be 5. But if I say ID is equal to max +1, then ID gets to be 5, and ID is now 5. So there was something, the ++ happened after the assignment, apparently. Okay, but now we have, I have a list of I messed up my list. Wonderful. Good stuff. Okay, I started over with the list. It was because I sort of stopped my debugging halfway through, I think. So now ID 5, 4, 3, 2. I think this is working as intended. Good. Let me delete this. Okay, so I have my model class here in place. I can read and write from a file, and I think that's good enough for the first part here. In the next part, we're going to start on actually viewing everything. So see you in part 2, perhaps.